G'day everybody and welcome back to Paddlecast. This is the first episode of the SUP Racer podcast in a couple of months. Took a couple of months off for various reasons, mainly just traveling, but I'm very, very excited about today's episode for a number of reasons. One of them is that it's the first episode of Paddlecast recorded in the brand new SUP Racer podcast studio. The guys from One Ocean Sports here on the Gold Coast of Australia have got this beautiful warehouse where they showcase their very nice boards right outside this door here. And they generously gave me this spare room and said you can turn it into the SUP Racer podcast studio. So if you've been watching on Instagram, behind the scenes all week, we've been building this place into what will hopefully be a fully fledged podcast studio soon. I won't give you the tour yet because there's still a few coats of paint and a bit of gear we got to set up in here. But I'm very, very excited. This is the first time in the 8 or 9 year history of SUP Racer that I've had a base to work from. I usually travel the world with this suitcase, with this tiny little briefcase actually. My whole life is in there, 10 months of the year. So to have a permanent base is very exciting and a little daunting actually, but it's gonna be cool because we're gonna be able to do a new episode of Paddlecast at least once a week. And I'm also gonna be doing a live news show every Monday starting next week or so out of here, which is exciting because there's a lot happening in the sport and there's a lot to share. So this is the new SUP Racer HQ. Today's episode I'm also excited about because it's none other than Paul Jacko Jackson. He's our guest today, and I'm biased. I've known Jacko for 10 years. I learned how to paddle with him. I've traveled around the world with him and his wife, Angie Jackson, who founded One Ocean Sports. But Jacko is one of the most interesting guys in the sport to chat to because he's got very strong opinions on the sport, but also very interesting ideas, very innovative ideas. And we talk about some of those today. This was recorded last week. I actually just finished editing the podcast on here, and just listening back to what Jacko was saying got me pretty fired up because there's one topic in particular that I think could be a bit of a game changer. We do talk a bit about the politics and some of the stuff going on behind the scenes, but one topic in particular, halfway through the podcast, to do with teams racing. I think it could be kind of the future of our sport. So just listening to the ideas that Jacko was sharing got me fired up. I hope it has a similar effect on you guys, even if you're half as excited about this new concept as we were. I got a good feeling. There's a lot of good energy around this. So without further ado, we'll bring Jacko on the screen. We actually recorded this last week, but we're gonna go back in time now, have a sit down with Paul Jackson. This was recorded on the first day I moved in here. There was nothing on the walls, no soundproofing. So there's a hell of an echo in this one, but we've since set up the studio, so it's gonna sound pretty slick in the future. So ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, Paul Jacko Jackson, recorded from the House of One. Jacko, welcome to Paddlecast, mate. It's a pleasure to have you on here.
It's good to be here.
I'm excited for a few reasons. One, because we're sitting in a very special room right now. Might not look it if you're watching this on YouTube. It's a bit bare bones at the moment, but this is the new SUP Racer X1 podcast studio.
Yep, good little place. Good place to hang out.
Yeah. So it's going to look a little different in a few weeks. We've got some big plans for this room, and we're going to do a few paddlecasts in here. So welcome everybody. You've seen behind the scenes before it's even built. The other reason I'm excited to have you on here is because, one, we did this podcast 2 months ago and the audio didn't work. Two, I feel like we've done this podcast 100 times in the past because you actually basically taught me how to paddle far out 8 years ago, 9 years ago, the end of 2010.
Have to be about that long.
Almost a decade.
Yep.
So it's your fault.
Yep.
Everyone that's ever yelled at SUP Racer, this is the guy to blame right here. He started it all. But it's been an interesting ride over the past 10 years, and I wanted to get your opinion on a few things because we have these podcasts behind the scenes every day down here. And I want to get some of your thoughts on record because they're very interesting. But also because you've probably got a better perspective of the sport and a more legitimate opinion and insight than basically anybody. You've been a professional athlete for the better part of a decade, more actually. Your first international race was 2009. You've been a team rider on multiple teams. You've been a team manager. You've started your own brand. You've had your own retail shop. You've had your own training group, and you're a prolific commenter on Facebook, which is apparently now like the main criteria for a paddling expert. So you basically covered all the bases. The only thing I think you haven't done so far is organise a world championship, but surely
maybe we can work on that one.
That's pretty easy these days. There's a few of them.
Yep.
But you pretty much covered the whole spectrum.
Yeah, been around a while and seen some ups and downs, and not everything's always smooth and rosy with this kind of sport, and changing between brands and starting my own brand and doing all the little things that we've done. It's always been exciting, and that's the main thing that we always, especially myself and Ange, have always tried to keep as part of our focus, is keep it exciting, keep it fresh. So it's definitely been that. So I know some people agree with some stuff I say, some don't, and it's just part of the sport. So I kind of like it. It's good. It's always good to have different opinions. So
absolutely, it's healthy.
Yeah.
I think if everyone's agreeing the whole time, then we're probably not getting anywhere.
That's right.
And if you're not pissing anybody off, then you're really not pushing things hard enough, because inevitably people are going to reject change and reject innovation because they're getting comfortable where they are and with the little pieces of power that they might have, or whatever the reason might be. So
right now, I guess there's probably more pissed off people in certain areas of the sport than there ever has been.
It's like a freaking
paddletics coming out everywhere, and everyone's got an opinion on something, and whether it's good or bad, it's still kind of happening. And it's
like an election campaign or something.
Yeah,
it's like we're in America and this is Trump versus whoever he's going to be going against. It's kind of getting silly for such a simple sport. We stand on basically a floating piece of foam with a paddle in our hands. It's only got a blade on one end. It's the simplest sport, and yet we've managed to
like one of the most confusing situations that any sport wants to be in. It's everyone kind of wants it, but no one really wants it, and we've got people arguing about us as a sport who really don't have any interest in us, and it's kind of crazy, that everyone's just scrambling because someone chucks a bit of money there or a bit of money there, and so everyone goes here and everyone goes there, and it's more confusion than anything. But it's I don't know, it's part of human nature, and if we all just went, oh, this is doing bad for our sport, listen, let's not go there, that's never going to happen. So
no, and that's I want to get right into that, but let's put that on hold for a second, because there's a couple of other things that are much happier to talk about. I want to get your opinion on starting a brand, for starters, and the innovations you guys have been doing, and also some new race formats, because I don't think anyone's put as much thought and effort into innovating the racing format side of our sport, which has been so stale for basically a decade, than you. So we'll get to that in a second, but first, we're here in the House of One. We're actually here in the One warehouse on the Gold Coast. And you guys have very generously let me kit out this room to be the Paddlecast studio. But you got some pretty nice boards out there. What's been the journey the past few years? Like if people said to me in the early days I was going to start a brand, I would have probably said no chance. But as evolution kind of goes on and different factors go in, I guess it is one of those things. And I learned a lot being a rider for a lot of brands, and maybe what not to do and what to do, and all those little pieces like that, which definitely helped. Yeah.
And I guess when it came to the decision time to make and start our own brand, it was a big one, and we actually really didn't do it to make money or anything like that. And we still really don't. Like if someone says, "Hey, you're making a good living out of it," we probably really aren't, but we get to live, eat, breathe paddling every day. I train every day, and I'm doing something I love, and I'm not labouring, and I'm not doing anything like that. So for me, it's a massive lifestyle and direction.
Yeah.
I probably could make more money somewhere else, but
I think we all could.
Yeah, and to be honest, I just choose not to, and Ange is the same. So we just kind of looked at it like that, and as it's progressed, we are slowly, our brand's still building, and it's pretty exciting that it's building, and we took a different direction to maybe a lot of other brands where we just focused on performance side and trying to get the construction side better all the time and not go on the cutting costs. side, and it probably hurts us in some areas because it's hard to make money when you're not cutting costs somewhere on material or boards or blanks or something. So
you're definitely doing quality over quantity.
Yeah, and that's really our focus is we want to just push the quality side. And I looked at where the sport was heading with really fragile boards, and everyone trying to make lighter but more fragile, and boards weren't lasting a season, and it just didn't really fit really well with me. So we kind of changed our whole concept. We want boards to last forever, and that's why we sandwich mold our boards, or now we do the hollow boards, and that kind of stuff is, you can still get the weights with it, but you get some durability with it. So
I'm very excited about the hollow innovations, especially because I got to paddle it basically the first one.
You got the first one, yeah.
I think I actually
kind of scored on that one. It was a bit of a rush, but
what a terrible guinea pig to put on as the test pilot. But fortunately, I didn't do too bad. I only got to paddle it one day because it was such a rush thing for the 11 cities. But that one day I paddled it was probably the best day I've had at the 11 cities in 5 years.
Yeah.
Just if you know what we're talking about, it's the I call it the rocket ship, but it's the Edge Pro 2.0, the official name.
Yeah.
The rocket ship. Basically, it's the funky looking board you would have seen all over Instagram. We've posted it a bunch the past few months. It just looks like a spaceship. It's this extraordinary design. And I want to hear why it's designed like that in a second, but my experience with it was amazing. As soon as I got on it, you could just tell that it glides so efficiently. And so I tried it in a 45-kilometer race, one stage of the 11 cities, and I don't think I was ever necessarily going faster than any other board, but I was holding my top speed basically the whole day. Like, I got to the finish and I never felt fresh at the end of a stage at the 11 cities. Like, I could have kept going.
Yeah, and that's the concept of that board. It's not a board if you want to go out and have a sprint race 100 meters. It's probably not going to be any faster than any 14-foot board. But if you want to go gliding over 10, 20, 30 Ks, the further you go, you can feel it. Like between the strokes, the board just doesn't really slow down. It kind of holds that speed, kind of a bit more like a ski. And it has got that advantage. And everyone that paddles it, you jump on it, it feels a little different, but you jump on and paddle for a little bit and you'll find that it actually the glide speed is crazy. And when we designed it, we kind of designed it a little differently. Most people are making boards narrow to go faster. We kind of went the other way, and you'd kind of ride a wider board to go faster. So if you're riding a 21-inch wide board now, you'd probably ride the 23 and a half. And that's probably faster than most 21s. But you've got a more stable platform in the center, you've got more power down, and the board's actually more efficient. So it's kind of, we've seen where it was kind of heading where everyone's just going narrow and narrow and narrow, and all of a sudden no one can stand on a board. And suddenly there's a few elite riders that can stand on a 20-inch wide board. So we kind of changed the concept with it, and we went, let's change it. So let's make a wider board faster.
Yeah.
So you're going to get some good properties with it. Like even for myself, I'll probably ride the 23 and a half this year on a lot of races, because that thing for me is as fast as I've ever been, and I can handle it upwind, downwind, and the side bumps. It's crazy, and tick turns amazing. So
yeah,
it's just been delivered all around the world at the moment. So heaps of guys are getting it. Should be heaps more reviews on that board.
Yes, I just saw a bunch just turned up in Germany, right?
Yeah, Germany and
Australia.
Italy's just got theirs, and Japan's had theirs for a little bit now. So should be more.
Yeah. Going to see a few at the Glogau Race in January, I think.
Yeah, I think Ange was just talking about she's going to go and do
that.
Oh,
we're trying to convince Ange getting the dry suit and hit the Glogau Race.
Yep.
Which is that's a fascinating event.
Yeah, it looks
500-600 people in the middle. It's in the middle of nowhere. It's not like you're in a popular town. It's like a ghost town in the winter. It's basically a summer resort town. So there's no one even really around. Just 500 mad, crazy paddlers that rock up at this little spot on the lake and paddle in the coldest water. It's like above freezing. It's maybe 3 degrees water Celsius. The air is usually below zero. It's often got snow on the ground, but it's maybe the second, third biggest race in the world now. What do you think?
That sounds awesome. Maybe it's good that Angie's in the other room and she can't hear this, but it's no, honestly, the footage from that race looks amazing. Like it's when a race gets 500 people in it, and it's when you've got that many mass people on the start line, that's crazy. That's what the sport needs.
Yeah, absolutely. No, it's special. I think it's an adventure.
Yep.
Like just doing that racing is adventure just because it's so cold. Like they even named it after the cold. Glogau is like the French term for when your teeth are chattering. Glug, 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 glug. Apparently that's where it comes from. So yeah, they embrace the fact that it's cold. No one's getting around that. But yeah, that's one of those bucket list events. And I think we need more of those because I noticed you're wearing the PPG shirt, which is an interesting little throwback. 2015, that was the first one. And that event's dead now.
Yeah.
And I think they made the mistake. That was actually a good event. Like they did a lot of things very well, but one of the big mistakes they made in that year was a lot of the open paddlers felt very alienated because of the price, how quick the race was. They just kind of felt second class, I think.
Yeah.
And that wasn't the direct cause of the race going away, but you saw in the last couple of years that it was dwindling.
Yeah, you could sense it. Like it maybe just went too elite too early. You know, it was a great race. Like don't get me wrong, I loved that race. And the surf, it was, you know, everyone still looks back, and I think you put up a post a while back, and you know, just everyone remembering 50 people on a wave and the carnage and boards going everywhere.
That was
and
the Salt Creek one. That was insane.
Yeah, and all those PPGs like that were crazy. So just, you know, those, I don't know, they're good, but maybe, yeah, I think they just, as you said, alienated a certain part, and that certain part, unfortunately, is the part the sport needs the most. You know, and that's the open paddlers and to keep everyone stoked.
Yeah, we need that base.
Yeah, and that's where these races like, I guess the Glogau and those races are, you know, we're not forgetting that core base, and a lot of the races structured around that concept. And if you're structured around that concept, I think you're always going to have a successful race. It's only when maybe your race starts targeting one particular group too much that you're going to alienate everyone else. You know, in Australia, it's simple that you look at, say, Surfing Australia kind of guys where you feel second class, and all of a sudden no one turns up to the race. It's because you feel alienated. You don't want to. You just don't want to be involved in something you're not really feeling like you're a part of. So that's that transfers to every kind of race. It's a simple formula.
I think we're probably all guilty of having pushed the sport towards this elitist edge over the last decade, but there's definitely been a groundswell. I've noticed the past year or two towards this whole grassroots kind of event, even though that's a bit of a cliche. It's true. Like the events that are successful are the ones that focus on the amateurs. Like you look at Glogau, you look at the Corinth crossing, 600 people, Paris, even before the APP came in, there was 600 or 700 people there. Those three events never had prize money. They were very easy to enter. What the
APP add to it? 15 people?
Oh,
sorry.
That's another debate. I think they actually took something away because before that, I remember every photo you'd see of Paris was the start line with 500 people at dawn, and it just looked epic. Like I've done the race, it's extraordinary. Out there with 499 people, they up at 100 every year, roughly. You're out there with 500 or 600 people. It's such a buzz. And you're on the River Seine, you're going past the Eiffel Tower, it's just the ultimate bucket list race. But then they came in, and it was part of the event, but it wasn't, and they had a separate start line like 5 minutes after the race started. So the images they were putting out was of 15 guys and like 7 women on the start line. Yeah. I looked at this image, I think there was literally just 7 women. And like, this is the biggest race in the world. There's 700 people, but the photo we see is of 7 paddlers. And I'm not gonna get into my thoughts on the APP, but that kind of sums up what they do wrong.
It is hard, like, you know, from someone who's done the APP from nearly the beginning stages and right through. And to be honest, look, in the early days, I really did want to support it. Like it was...
Well, I think we all did.
Yeah, I actually wanted to push it, and it had a kind of a direction that I thought was not too bad, but I think it kind of gets a little lost in money and greed and self-image and stuff like that, and it forgets where the core came from. And it's probably one side of the event that really just focused on the elite, when really we didn't really have an elite sport. Like we had elite guys, but it's not like it's an elite field when, you know, it's so early in the sport's days. Maybe in another 5-10 years we really could have that. But when you're just trying to target these 15 guys, and they're all good guys, like I had all those guys all the time, but it's just, I don't know, trying to force the sport to that, just every time I watch it, I just cringe now. It's And from someone who really was a supporter of it in the early days, and then over the years I've just seen it now, I'm kind of, I guess my eyes have been open to the better ways of doing it, and then seeing events not really catching on to it and we're trying to feed off something else. It's
Yeah, I think in the early days we were all like, I remember it used to be called the World Series, right? And the very first event was held, remember Namotu that Jake went to? Fiji. It was November 2011. And SUP Racer started December 2011. And I was like prepping it for months. So basically, as I was getting ready to like hit launch on SUP Racer was when the APP launched, or the World Series launched. So I thought it was fascinating, like basically we're the same age. And in the early days, I was actually a pretty big cheerleader of that. And it wasn't until probably a few years later that we all started getting a little disgruntled. And even then, you know, I think we'd like to see it succeed, but
yeah, these days, like,
it's just going in a very money.
Yeah, they've done some really good things for the sport
direction,
and definitely kind of some athletes have really bonused. They've got, you know, good publicity out of it and actually really got a career out of the APP, and it's pushed.
A few of them definitely have.
Yeah, for sure, and you can't take anything away from that side of what they've done. I think that's one definitely good side of the APP that's come out of it. But as a general for the entire sport, I just don't know. Like a lot of events I've done. I've done some cool events. Like the Dubai event was actually a pretty cool event. It was unique and
that was surreal.
It does amaze me that how they continually do reinvent to somehow get so much money to do those kind of events.
Well, that's the one thing they do very well. Their execution isn't always perfect, and I think their philosophy is skewered too far away from the base, but they find money in a sport where people struggle, and I know this from personal experience, people struggle to find any money. Yeah. Athletes, media, brands, shops, whatever it is. It's hard to get money. The APP guys
do an amazing job at that.
They find more money than anyone. What they do with it's another question.
Yeah.
But they get that part which is critical in, you know, sports and business. That side of things is quite critical. So regardless of what they do with the money, they've done one very difficult part very well. I always used to say that in the beginning, they're doing the hardest things really well and the easiest things really bad.
Yeah,
it was very confusing.
I guess they fall into the bracket of overpromising, under-delivering a lot of the time, and that really hurts. I think a lot of those things like that, you know, when they're coming out and they're saying they're going to be one of the best, this is the world tour, this is the elite of the elite, and then it comes and, you know, we're going to have the best live cast, and all of a sudden it doesn't get shown or something else, and it always seems to be an excuse after excuse after excuse, and I guess that's even from my side. You know, a lot of people might say, oh, these days I might bash the APP a little bit, and maybe I do, but I guess I've been there for 10 years looking at it, and you can only take so much of empty promises, you know, and you can only take so much of seeing the sport get pushed further and further away from the average person, and that's where I kind of see it was going, and it still kind of is going that way, you know.
How would you fix it? Say if Tristan and the APP guys tapped you on the shoulder, which they'd be smart to do, and said, Jacko, like, just consult with us for a few months. How do we turn this around?
Look, I guess there's probably a few basic things they do. For one, I wouldn't be overpromising every event. Just
don't promise a delayed live stream in San Francisco.
Yeah, and just go into it with a bit more of an open mind of what is actually possible, looking at what you've done in the past, and set that as the basic goal of what you want to get. And if you actually do better, then people are going to commend you on doing better than what you said you're going to do, instead of coming out and going, we're going to have the best, and then you have one of the worst. You know, you've got this guy like yourself who has a phone and no budget, who does a better job than all these guys with all this money, and it just doesn't give the best feeling anywhere along the whole situation. So I guess, you know, that's just one little part. There's just having a thought process about how the race courses are run, and not maybe letting the athletes dictate so much. You know, like when you start letting the athletes dictate what the race courses are and having too much say, you're always going to run into trouble. And you know, some events go the other side and they just go firm, this is how they're going to go, and they never listen to anyone. You know, you have a compromise and have a bit of a balance. You know, like
this is not a democracy. Famous speech.
There's like a fine line. You can always take the feedback, but you've got to also understand what is right, what's going to be right for the media, what's going to be right for the athletes. setting courses where they're super unfair for one athlete, it's a killer straight away. As soon as a course is like that, your race is doomed before it starts.
What did you think about those sprints in Japan? I heard, to politely put it, I heard mixed reports from the athletes.
But they nearly had it right in the fact that, to be honest, if they just made the first turn an individual turn at the top end and each person had their own pillar to go around, it would have been all right. But when you've got 4 people racing and 2 people racing for one marker, the person who gets to that marker first is going to get through. Unless you've got someone like a Connor against a really new paddler, then you're really not going to have an overtaking situation. So it becomes quite boring and stale to watch. You've got to keep it a bit more exciting. You can't have stupid rules. I think they brought in some rule about barging, and on a course, the barging rule they brought in was so stupidly crazy. I was looking at it just like, oh my God, I can't believe they brought that in. And I understand why.
Well, the ICF tried to do a similar thing in their event. One of the things, which was an amazing event, but behind the scenes it wasn't perfectly smooth. And one of the things that was really interesting was they tried to bring in a buoy turn priority rule midday during the beach race. It's for starters, you can't introduce a rule mid-race, mid-event. And secondly, how the fuck are you going to police a buoy turn rule? They had the right intentions. It was basically, if your nose is behind the person's foot or whatever, you don't have right of way. If it's ahead, you can stick your board through. But you're talking about millimeters of difference. Are you going to disqualify someone because they stuck their nose through, which is a standard tactic?
Yeah, and
how do you police that? And what is the solution with the buoy turns? Because
I think it's pretty simple. If you go sticking your board between someone's legs and continuously, and there's people who have done this in the racing that I've been in and there's certain people who do it a lot because it's definitely a way to slow the person down in front for sure. And you can go into a turn a little bit behind and kind of come out and jam pack it all up. But I think if your board goes between the legs, that's barging. There's no need for that at the kind of level. But if you go into a turn and there's no board between the legs and you can kind of get around the inside, we want a bit of contact in the racing. We don't want to just make it too separate. Otherwise, we just have lanes. We just put ourselves in lanes and we don't touch each other, and it'll be boring. We want to have a little bit of barging at the turns. We want to make it contact, but just not deliberately where someone just runs into a turn and mows into that whole turn and screws everyone up. So it's easy. If your board goes between someone's legs, you might be able to get away with it once, but if you start doing it all the time, I think it was it the APP who disqualified someone recently?
I missed that.
One of the races recently, they did actually DQ someone for putting
who got DQ'd?
One of the Brazilian guys, I think. Might have DQ'd for
one of the little kids.
No, maybe for just putting the board between the legs. So, So I think there's the right way is there, but then they also brought in that if you cut up the inside at all, that you're going to get a penalty, and it's if you're on the inside and you're going to how do you get past otherwise? What the hell? It's a race to the first buoy otherwise. Let's race to the first buoy and be done with it.
Yeah. No, that's very interesting. But I know you got a lot of opinions on race courses, race formats, and I want to get your take on something that we've discussed that I think is very exciting and that I want to see that we're going to make come to life. But I think it's got potential to change the sport, which is team racing. What's your thoughts? Because we're in this very individualistic sport, right? Basically, you go out there and you compete, and even if you're all on Team Starboard, they're the worst competitors of all. Everyone's competing against themselves. But if we can make this about a team, team format, team atmosphere, and you've got to actually work together, it brings in this whole new strategy for the athletes and a whole new storyline for me and the media, who can actually, make it engaging for people watching. You can tell this interesting story, Tour de France style.
Yeah.
Tell us what your idea is.
We've discussed.
Have you posted this on Facebook yet?
No, we've done.
All right, this is the premiere.
We've really, since we talked about it, it's kind of been a little bit backburnered. And I agree, there is such a potential for our sport to, and this isn't for all races. That some races won't suit the team format for sure, but other races, but especially the long distance races, 40Ks, 30Ks, really could have this team race concept, but it could elevate the sport to a whole new level. And there's so many exciting ways where you have 3 or 4 people in your team, you know, and you're only as strong as your weakest link. So this is what makes team racing exciting. You know, you could have Boothie on your team, but if your third guy or girl isn't as strong, then what's the point? Like he might end up being more damage to your team than he's worth. You know, because if he's breaking everyone all the time, and there's no point. And if you can't work together, then there's no point either.
Yeah.
So it's
how do you see the format?
The format's
it's obviously we're blue skying at the moment. We haven't practiced this, but give us an example of how it could look.
So if you're doing, let's say your 40k race, I think what you'd try and do is you'd have positions in your team. So
and this would be a dedicated team race.
This is
right?
you know individuals allowed. Like this isn't a race where you want to go and punch out 40k's and try and win an individual race. You just won't be able to do it. Like the main focus on this race, and this is part of it, is who organises these races makes the team race the main focus. You know, you don't want an individual to come out and beat all the teams. It doesn't look really good. So it's just a team race. You know, this is part about getting people to work together, have a good time together. You know. And socialise together, and that's when you look at a lot of sports that do this, they actually thrive, like because that team atmosphere is crazy. You know, you get to go and train together, hang out together, paddle together, work together. It's a great recipe right there. And then when you put it into race practice, you know, you have the team guy who might have to finish first, and then you might have your, you know, my concept a little bit is you'd have like sprinting buoys halfway through the course or staggered through the course, and you might have a sprinter which you set up. You know, he might sit at the back of the train and rest for the sprints, and then when he pushes out to the sprints, you might get time bonuses.
So basically the Tour de France.
A little bit, yeah. Let's just take the Tour de France and put it on paddling, and you know, instead of a hill climb, we've got sprinting buoys and.
Well, they even have the intermediate sprints on the flat stages.
Yeah, and you can have each guys. You might be able to drop, if you've got 4 people teams, you might be able to drop one guy through the day. You know, he might be your workhorse guy, just chugs the train for 3/4 of the race.
But basically, Boothie can't go out on his own because it's going to be like the third. Say it's a team starboard or team shore or whatever however many sponsors that guy's got. But there's 4 guys, right? Say it's Boothie, Daniel, Connor, and like a Leo. And maybe like
a pretty weak team.
Yeah, you know, pretty weak team. Good luck against those boys. But let's say like one of the boys gets dropped, and the other 3 have to stick together all the way to the finish. Or if they don't, either way, it's the third guy over the line is going to be your team's finishing time. And there's no result for Boothie getting first. There's no Michael Booth at the top of the results. It's just team starboard. You know,
you might,
team SIC,
the
team
finish, 1. You know, the finish line could be a sprinting, one of like a little time bonus. So with 100 meters to go, you know, you might have especially if there's a few teams together, you might have your top guy sprint to the finish line, but your overall time doesn't.
But he'd still get bonus points for the team.
Yeah, you still get a few bonus points or time deductions or whatever else, whatever system you run. But really, the main thing is that your overall main team time won't click off until the third person paddles across the line. So
I like it.
It's, to be honest, the concept.
Like the team time trial. They have it in cycling, not even the Tour de France, but they have like the team time trial.
Yeah.
But this would be like a mass start of teams.
Yeah. You know, if you really wanted to stretch,
you can even have a team time trial. I think we talked about this. You can even have a separate.
Well, this was
like levels of this format.
This was the option with, you know, you have your long distance on one day or in the morning, and then you have your 10k time trial in the afternoon, where there's no wash right in between teams. There's no anything. It's basically your team goes out minute gaps and they work together. They swap the leads, you know, and you've got to get your whole team across the line. It's a proper team time trial, and then the 2 times are added together. You know, really, this is the whole concept. The concepts are endless. We haven't even scratched the surface. You know, it's once we get out of the focus mind of just looking at what we have and moving into potentially what we could have. It's endless, and you know, it's happened for 10 years that we've really run the same race courses. It's mind-boggling.
Distance race, course race,
and
every time.
And the objection to new race courses and ideas actually is pretty hard for people to get their head around. I guess a good example, just a little bit off topic, is in the Aussie Bill, INX. You know, crazy that all the Ironman had this opportunity to put stand up into a sport to really make their sport lift a little. And
it's like basically they're combining lifeguard racing, which is a televised sport in Australia, a professional sport. They want to introduce one extra leg. So they already got prone, surf ski, swimming is like this. They've been doing that for 100 years.
Yeah, and look, and the level really, and it's been dropping off. Like it's been dropping off since the early days where it was just crazy and everyone was killing it. That it's steadily been declining, and now they wanted to try and just make it a bit more, like, how do you say, just appeal a bit more.
Friendly.
Yeah, spectator friendly, appeal a bit more.
TV friendly.
So they chucked in, you know, the idea of a SUP leg and some CrossFit kind of stuff on the beach, which really is a great idea. But when it all came to the crunch, all the all the Ironman of the clubs and the top guys all of a sudden object to it, try and squash it, all chuck their hissy fits because it's not in the tradition of the sport, and all of a sudden you kind of just kick this thing out, which could have really taken their sport from where it is now dying to a whole new level. You know, it's still going to happen from what I hear, but...
Well, it's a one-off. They were originally going to do a whole series.
Yeah.
The Nutrigrain series was going to have SUP in it.
Yeah.
Which would have been amazing for SUP, because that's next level in this country, Ironman racing, lifeguard racing. But now they're going to do a one-off INX on Australia Day, and it's still going to be a big deal. It's $100,000.
Yeah.
$100,000 prize purse. Aussie dollars. It's like Monopoly money, but it's like $10. But it's huge. It's like $70,000 for one race with, I think there's only 24 competitors. Like it's the super elite, invite only. There's 12 guys, 12 girls. It's a big televised spectacle. And they're gonna do a ski leg, a prone leg, a swim leg, that Ninja Warrior CrossFit on the beach, and then a SUP leg.
It's exciting they are bringing in some outside athletes who are CrossFitters and stuff like, and trying to blend it in a little bit.
And some SUP athletes.
And some SUP athletes, you know.
It's not official yet, but I know.
Yeah.
We can mention them. Boothy's gonna be there. Lincoln's gonna be there.
Which are pretty much, these guys are pretty much Ironman guys anyway.
They grew up
doing ski, and Boothie can ski and paddle and swim and that kind of stuff. So
they'll go close to winning.
I think they're going to be pretty close.
And Jackson Maynard, who was in China with us, got to be good. He'll be close to winning it.
Yeah, for sure. Like if the guys who aren't good at SUP aren't practicing SUP, they're going to get a shock in that leg, I think.
But you make a good point. That basically, here's this innovation, even though it's parallel to our sport, and people were like, we don't want it.
Eating on it. Like, but from what I hear, and this is a part of the problem with a lot of stuff, you know, you only get a little bit of hearsay and it's all closed door talking and stuff like that. But from what you hear, it's like it just got shot down. Like here's an opportunity where these guys could potentially earn a lot more money. You know, but because of some tradition,
reinvigorate their sport is most important.
You know, it's because 60 years ago they did this and did this. It's like, what the hell? Like times progress, we all move forward. We all, you know, our sports will go off in different areas. If you don't move, all of a sudden your sport dies, and then you go back and run around the oval or something. I don't know.
Well, that's exactly what happens in SUP. The BOP set this format 10 years ago, exactly 10 years ago. The BOP started in 2008. They didn't run a distance race that first year. The second year, they came in with the format of the beach race, like the BOP race, and then the distance race. So 2009, that's just over 10 years ago, last month. So we've had a full decade of essentially the exact same format. And there's been very few innovations. I can think of two. One was Jamie's Survivor Race, which I think was still very underrated. That was a cool format.
Yeah.
The other one is your famous Super Lap. Jacko's Super Lap,
which gets used in variations.
Is still one of the coolest innovations we've ever had, because it just changes the dynamic and you don't know who's going to be basically winning until the final lap. And there's strategy involved. And I think the more strategy you can bring in, the more interesting a race can be, because you can tell,
especially on a long distance race, for sure. Like when you get a race that potentially can be quite a boring race to televise, then you do have to try and think of ways to keep it a bit more exciting. Exception, I think, and I think you showed this with the ICF one in China, that actually if it's really well broadcast, and it's a very well set up. Obviously, athletes do have to play the game and make it a close race, but you can actually have a pretty exciting distance race, which in big loops, realistically. You know, like when I watched that, I kind of looked at it and went, man, this is pretty exciting because of all the angles and you're covering the guys and the girls really evenly, and actually made it a pretty exciting race for what traditionally is a pretty boring race.
I was impressed with that one. That actually set a record for the most ever live stream viewers of any SUP event. Like if you look at the viewers at the finish of the race, not including replays or like promoted posts that certain events will do to fluff up their numbers, but if you just look at who watched it live, that was by far the biggest ever in our sport. There was something like 60,000 people watched it live. And apparently 10 times that were watching on like domestic Chinese social media where Facebook's banned. But which is a whole other discussion about that event. But you're right, I looked at that course and was like, you kidding me? We're doing 3 laps around the harbour? This is going to be batshit. How am I going to make this interesting? But with the production we had there, it's like multi-million dollar broadcast setup. The local TV station was running it all. They had 2 massive trucks full of, I was a kid in a candy store when I saw what our setup was going to be. We had 14 cameras, 12 land cameras, 10 land cameras, 2 boat cameras, 2 drones. And then all we had to do was look at our screen and commentate, and we'd see him come past at the end every lap. It was amazing. And we had sitting next to us, at the table next to us, these Portuguese guys that were the graphics team. There was 4 of them just dedicated to putting those graphics on the screen. And I'd just like mute my mic and say, can we just show like how many meters between Boothie and Kenny's group right now? And like 10 seconds later, be like, all right, Boothie's group's 275 meters ahead of Kenny's group. And it's basically Tour de France. There's a few things that need to be polished, but that was so far and above the best we've ever seen in our sport. Yeah. In terms of quality.
When I looked at, and I was just watching it, and I was just one of those, 60,000 people watching. But what I kind of looked at was the comments on the side. Because usually the comments are nearly the most entertaining part of the whole thing. You can read like everyone's taking the piss a little bit, and saying how bad it is, or follow the girls, or do this or do that, and it was just none of that. And that's, to be honest, that's where one of the most impressive things was we've got this race that traditionally is boring, traditionally gets hammered on social media, and there was no negative comments.
That was extraordinary. I went back through and watched all the comments. That was, you're right, I didn't see a single negative comment.
No.
And that's, from my own experience, that doesn't happen.
No.
So I think you're right. If we cover the races the right way, we can make anything interesting.
And then if you have actually a bit more interesting format, then actually it'll just lift it again. Like we can make what we've got exciting. But the idea is that we actually can still make it even more exciting again. All we've got to do is not close our minds and think that what we've got is good enough. Whether it's a small tweak or a big tweak, or someone's got a completely original idea, like the ideas really, they should never be frowned upon. If you've got a good idea, go and try it at your local club. Go to your local club and say, hey, look, I'd love to try this race format, draw it up and give it a go. Because that's all we did with a lot of the race formats that I've come up with is, take it to the local club, let's try and run this, and see how it works. And some don't work, some do work. And, we were running little Ironman swim, paddle, push-up races 6-7 years ago, and actually they are pretty exciting races. So it's like that Iron X, when it goes, will probably work pretty well. Good athletes, make it look good, should have a good production.
Yeah.
It's just a pity that so many people are against it.
Yeah, I don't understand that.
Like the negativity will kill it, and that's what happens. But it's too many negative people, and too many negative people in high positions who really don't mean squat. But a lot of those guys making decisions have no interest in SUP whatsoever, or no interest in progressing our sport. That's half the issue.
So let's get back to the teams racing. So I think this can be the new format.
Yeah.
This can be the new Super Lap. So let's do a trial run next year. We'll find a weekend. We just need to get maybe 10 teams. And this fun thing is, this isn't just for the Boothies and the Connors and the Olivias and the Sonnies. This could be so much fun for the amateur clubs, because suddenly it's like, all right, me and my two buddies are going to beat you and like our other two buddies. Like you get these fun little rivalries within the paddle clubs, within the training groups, and
it opens up different divisions. You know, different ways you think of divisions. You know, instead of just having over 40s, over 50s, you might have divisions that are 100 years and under. So what you do is all your team members have to be equal 100 years of age and under. So or 60 and under, and something like, it's just so you basically, there's sometimes you might not be able to have all 15-year-olds in your team who are just the fastest paddlers ever. You've got to have, a 40-year-old and a young kid and stuff like that. So it's a good way to kind of mix up the age divisions. And I started playing a little while ago and just trying to get the divisions actually sorted like that. And there's a few formulas that kind of work pretty well. So it's and this is the whole concept. Like, as long as you don't close your mind to anything, we don't have to look at what we've got now and have pro, open, girls, whatever. We can just have in basically big age division blocks.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter if you're an over 40, because being an over 40 might be an advantage to a team. So
that's fascinating. We haven't even discussed it. That's a whole nother level to this.
Yeah.
I like it. Basically, you have like the 100 plus division, the sub 100 division, like the 150 plus division.
Yep.
We could really.
Yeah, and then all of a sudden you fall into your division. Like I can think of heaps of teams around. If you take a whole bunch of guys there's a club up on the Gold, just in Brisbane, BrisSUP, and they've got, it's probably the formula for their club is more social paddling. They've got a lot of people aged probably from 30 to 60 in their club, so they could have a bunch of teams with the average age of 40, and they'll fall into like 160 and under kind of thing, and all of a sudden that's a pretty competitive bracket.
Yeah.
They might have 20 teams in that kind of bracket. It's pretty cool. So it does level things out really, really well without having to separate us into, pro and amateur and stuff like that. So
yeah. I think there's a lot of potential for this format. I like it. We got to make it happen.
Yeah.
Let's do a test run. Let's announce it now. What are the dates?
Well, for sure. And then the same thing, if anyone's out there and they've got a race, and some races, this format will work really, really well. Like long distance races, some races might be dropping in numbers, and if someone wants to rejuvenate their race, this could be a concept where, we need something new. Let's try this concept. Chuck it into your local club and have a go.
Like a Tahoe race or something. One of those old hot spots that's kind of, had past its glory days. Bring in something like this.
Yeah.
The only thing is, it's probably got to be flat water. It's going to be difficult to do in the ocean.
It'll be harder to do in the ocean because
I actually tried it in that one in Sardinia, maybe. Just right after 11 Cities, a few of the boys went down there. And they were trying to trial something similar where they were doing like a group race, but it was in the ocean and it was very bumpy, so you can't draft. You basically got to do something where you can draft.
And if let's look at where the sport's heading at the moment anyway. Like the sport's heading and growing in the flat water orientated areas. And I guess we might chat a bit about ICF and ICS in a minute, but if we're looking at where the sport is going, it is going flat water, hard distance, races around Statue of Liberty and whatever else, stuff like that, so...
it's the middle Americas, the middle Europes.
Yeah.
We're not a coastal sport anymore.
All these races that are having these mass participations are user-friendly, everyone can do them, and that's the thing. So this format will work better for those kind of areas for sure.
Yeah. All right, let's do it. We're going to draw up the basic outline, and then we'll just open source it.
Yeah.
And we're going to come up with a name.
Yeah, come up with a name.
Jacko's.
Maybe we can put it out there.
Let's start with Jacko's.
Yeah.
Jacko's.
I'm sure someone will come up with a pretty cool name for it and tweak it.
Yeah, I think we could do a lot because you've got the mass start one, so you're going to have 4 people per team. You might have 20 teams.
Yeah.
Right? So you got 80 paddlers. 80 paddlers on the start line, and then they go off. It's going to be that crazy mass start image, but you'd have to have a rule within that race. Okay. If there's 3 guys and then the 5th one, you can't bash in and
you can't interfere. You can't interfere with another team's pack realistically. Like if you can't squeeze in and cut the second and third guy in a team, like if you want to wash ride that team, that's fine. You have to fall behind the last paddler in that team. Like if you get caught in the middle of some other team, you're out. Like it's simple. That's an easy rule. Like you just can't. It's a team race.
But you can draft other teams.
You can
teams
draft other teams. Yeah, you can draft other teams.
Like Tour de France style. You see like Team Sky or Ineos, whatever they're called now. They'll lead the peloton. Then you basically just see the colours. Everyone bunches up, but they're in a pack. Yeah, stay in your own team, play with your own team, and look if you want to rush ride off the top team. And look, I'd do it if there's a crazy strong team and a little stronger. I would set our team on the back, and they can just continuously lead in their team. No worries, I don't care. Yeah.
But at the end of a sprint race, you still got to get past all those guys, you know.
Well, that'd be interesting because they could get. So like, all right, say Boothie's team, because it would be Boothie's team, is on front, and he's like, well, fuck these guys. They're all just there's like 8 teams drafting our team. They'd have like some code word. It's like, all right, the 4th guy, you just got to take a sip of water and like cock block the team behind you, and do it like at this opportune time when the 3 front boys sprint off. Yeah. So they basically just disconnect their wagon and like they deliberately leave their 4th guy behind.
Yeah, yeah, you got to, and that's I guess the concept. You know, there's so many different variables that can come into a race like this. You know, and it also works the other way that you can't if the teams are wash riding Boothie's team. Boothie can't just continuously sprint because he couldn't end up breaking his own guys.
Yes.
Which has been no benefit to anybody. So you've got to talk to each other. You've got to communicate really well.
You have to practice this. And they'd have to train this format. Train
the way you do your lead swaps, because if your front guy just pulls off, you're going to lose time. Every time he pulls off, you lose a board length.
Yeah.
So there's heaps of different ways to format it and keep it exciting, and it's kind of endless.
And the intermediate sprints I really like. That's what I've been pushing 11 Cities guys to introduce, like intermediate sprints, because it brings in this whole dynamic. It's like, okay, if you can get a minute bonus if you win a sprint at the 25k mark of a 50-kilometer race, that's going to be huge at the end. Yeah. But if you kill yourself trying to get that free minute, it might cost you 10 minutes at the end because you just burnt yourself out and you can't hang on to the train in the second half. Yeah. So it comes strategic. It's like, how do you balance out your race? And I think the more of that we can add in, like this team's race doesn't even exist, and I'm getting excited.
That's right.
About it. Like we're just imagining this, and it's exciting.
Every time we think about it, it's like, oh, geez, what can we do? And you can think of something new, and some new idea pops in your head, and you're like, wow. It goes endless. So it's and that's hopefully someone listens to this and goes, you know what, shit, that's going to work really well here. I've been looking at doing a race. This could be perfect, you know, and run it. Like there's no.
So you'd have like a mass start team race. You'd have like a team time trial, like the TTT, where you do like say 2-minute gaps, and every team's just racing like a set 10k flat course. They get the best time. Yep. And then you could even have like, I look at what they do in cross country skiing and biathlon, which we could learn a lot from because they're similar sports. You know, they're the boring version of the winter sports traditionally. You're not skiing downhill, you just go on the flat. It's like what we are compared to surfers basically. But that's a fascinating sport. You get into biathlon, I got hooked. Watching them in France with Elaine, I was an instant nerd about that sport. But what they have is the pursuit, which it's not particularly unique to that sport, but the way they do it is amazing. You do 2 events, say on like the Saturday or whatever, Friday, Saturday, and you're accruing time. And then on the Sunday, it's the main event and it's the pursuit. And whatever you finish at the end of the pursuit, that's your result for the whole event. So if you've gained 30 seconds in the mass start or the sprint or whatever, you're the first guy or girl, you go out, the second guy doesn't start for 30 seconds behind you. And basically, it's just like you're trying to chase down the leader. Yeah. So we could do that. We could do that in individual SUP racing. But in this team one, you could have like the team pursuit. Yep. And you'd start, okay, Boothie's team, they start 45 seconds ahead. And then you've got like, say Lincoln's team has just got to mow them down, and then that really have to work together. Yeah. And that's when...
Yeah, if Boothie's team starts making too many changes, then the start swapping too much, and all of a sudden Lincoln's team doesn't do as many changes. You know, these guys are losing a board length every time they change, and if they change twice as much, that's a pretty big gap.
Yeah.
It's going to come back.
Yeah.
So it's let's say every time we talk about it, we get pretty excited, and you know, I guess it's taking the excitement from where it is now to an actual.
Now we just got to do
progress it into the water. Yeah, progress it into the water.
Find 40 odd guinea pigs.
Yeah.
And we need a cool name.
Yeah, we need a cool name.
We can think about that this afternoon.
Yeah.
But we do actually have to go soon because we're going to a wedding. But one last topic. I want to get your opinion on. Paddletics. It's becoming this saga. Like the last 3 years, this court case, the mediation and all the drama behind the scenes for the Olympics. ICF, ISA, canoeing, surfing, like there's so many egos involved, so many loyalties, so much money and basically just political power at the end of the day. But are we wasting our time with the Olympics? Is this even an argument we should be having?
It's hard to say.
Are the Olympics worth it?
It's hard to say because we're not in it, so we can't really make the decision to say is it worth it or not. Like, I guess some people think it's the top end of our sport, whereas others might go, whatever, I don't really care. What I do find hard is, most of let's say 99.9% of the paddling community, we're all just guessing at what's going on behind the closed doors. So we're all talking, and even what we say today, it's really like my opinion of what I've heard and stuff like that, or how I feel on the situation, because all these people who really have nothing to do with SUP are making all these massive decisions for us that are going to dictate how we progress in our sport. And if you ask me, just my opinion on it, then ISA would be shitting their pants. Because
after Qingdao,
ICF did such a good job with their one event. In the 10 plus years ISA has been trying to run it, one event squashed 10 years worth of their effort,
Yeah.
If you'll ask me, ISA really has no interest in stand-up paddleboarding whatsoever. Maybe in some countries they do. I see it from Australia's point of view, where it's a surfing organisation, and to be honest, any surfer that was going to cross over into stand-up paddleboarding now, it's probably crossed over. Is there any real surfers left? Surfers think the sport's a little kooky. So they really, 99% of surfers hate stand-up paddleboarders. They don't want anything to do with it. Yet we are trying to get their organisation the organisation seems to be, we want SUP in our thing, but 99% of ISAs, what are built up of, don't want SUP. So why do we really want to go that way? Are we more of a canoeing sport anyway? We traditionally came from stand-up paddleboarding in the waves, and maybe the surfing side potentially probably could go the ISA because it is surfing. But when you talk racing, we making boards that realistically are stand-up canoes.
Everything's a dugout.
Everything's a dugout. Those days where we're trying to keep it traditional, looking like a surfboard, are gone. They were gone back when the Ace and those kind of boards were made. That just doesn't come into the conversations anymore. If you want to be a surfing sport, you're tripping, because those days they're gone. So, what I did see from the ICF was all these new potential people crossing over into our sport of stand-up paddleboarding.
Yeah.
All this reach that we never actually had before, because really those canoe guys didn't want anything to do with surfing. And we, realistically, surfing doesn't want anything to do with us. And that's where I look at it these days. The more than anything, surfing as a general, and I'm a surfer, but surfers don't want anything to do with stand-up paddleboarding. You know what I mean? And that's going to be put deep inside the ISA. If you ask all the ISA committee who aren't really interested in the money side of it, probably, which maybe there's a few, I don't know, but the ones who aren't, they could care less about stand-up paddleboarding.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Our local organisations could care less about stand-up paddleboarding in the ISA in Australia. To me, it's a dirty word for ISA. It's just they see money there somewhere or something, and I know some people are pushing hard, and I see there's a benefit for ISA and ICF to have it. In my mind, neither should have it. It's our own individual sport. But
that's the big debate. Every time I post an article saying, the gist of most of my articles is that you're both doing a shit job.
Yeah.
Every comment is well, we're neither. Kristen Thomas summed it up saying, regardless, at the end of the day, we want to be stand-up paddlers. We don't want to be canoeists. We don't want to be surfers. We want to be paddlers, stand-up paddlers. But I think you're right. We don't know what the Olympics are going to do for us. I was very, very skeptical before I went to China. After I went to China, I saw the potential, just because someone like a China would pour so many resources, so much money, but also so many athletes into the sport. I guarantee you, if this sport ever gets in the Olympics, by the second cycle of the Olympics, China will win every gold.
Yeah.
They're insane the way they go for towards their Olympic sports. So that potential, and there's a few countries that would do that, but that's still relatively limited. That's not necessarily helping the grassroots. It could just become this elite funnel. So that's not a guaranteed, plus. But what I think we can do is we can actually gain a lot from the canoeing world, even without the Olympics. Like you said, we've exhausted the surfing world. We were never cool for this. Like, I was a surfer as well. We grew up, when I saw SUP, I was like, that's the stupidest thing I've ever seen. You're taking the worst part of surfing, the paddling, and just doing a whole sport around it. It's like, how did CrossFit become a sport? It's the same with SUP. The workout became the sport. So basically, we're kooky towards surfers, but with canoeists, we're actually, a lot of them are they don't like us because we're taking the ICF's money all of a sudden, but essentially, we're kind of like a cooler version of canoeing.
Yeah.
But regardless of opinions on, fashion and style, there's just such a huge audience of canoe paddlers out there. Like, I've been to races in the Czech Republic that have 1,400 people on the start line, and 1,200 of them are in a different division, rafts, canoes, kayaks, but all of them would be willing to cross over into SUP, I'm sure. Like, most of them would be at least willing, and a lot of them are. Like, it's growing really big in Eastern Europe, stand-up paddling. We're going back there next year. There's a race with 2,500 people, and 2,000 of them are like Boy Scouts. And the locals over there have introduced this program where they'll all try stand-up paddling. So one event in one relatively obscure SUP nation has suddenly just introduced 2,000 new stand-up paddlers, and that's purely from the canoe side. Like, if you asked every surfer in the world, you might get 2,000, out of the 20 million around the world that want to become stand-up paddlers. So
I guess that's right. Like, if you just came into our sport right now and you went, is our sport a surfing sport or a canoeing sport? Probably most people would say it is more leaning towards canoeing sport. It's probably neither, realistically. Like, it is, SUP is our own sport, but we definitely do lean to the left more than to the right. Like, and I guess that's showing these days in the 99% of the races that we do. Most of flat water. We've gone away from doing a lot of the bop style in and out of surf racing, and I guess even a lot of the stuff I hear. I seen a couple of interviews the other day from some ISA guys, and they're crying poor, and all of a sudden it's like, well, why do we want to go with the poor cousin? Why do we go and chew up the guy who's got all the money in ICF? I got all the money. Let's go over there and play with them, because they've got the money to help SUP along maybe at the moment. And you know what? If down the track they screw us over, you know what? We're going to be in a much better position by then. Then we might better take it somewhere else. Let's, as a sport, I guess it's always hard because no one wants to use anyone, but let's use the resources we've got. Like, ISA have no resources left for us. We're now going to prop up ISA. So what the fuck do we want to go over there? Like, let's just go over here and chew up their resources, because these guys are frothing at the moment. No worries.
That was a bizarre interview.
Yeah.
With the ISA, with Bob from the Director General. Basically saying, first he was saying, playing the victim, saying, oh, ICF's got so much money, we can't compete. I'm like, okay, well,
sweet.
We'll go with them. Yeah. And then they finished off saying how much better their business model was, because they don't yet get Olympic money. They're self-funded. I'm like, you're self-funded because you charge your athletes $1,000 to do the ISA Worlds. It's not a good business model the ISA has. And it still doesn't answer the question of, well, if the ICF has so much more money, why is this even a question? Neither of you doing a great job. Why don't we just go with one that can at least afford to develop our sport?
And the arguments they give up, like in the social media posts, the ISA do such a bad job at just trying to pretend that they are this great almighty thing that invented stand-up paddleboarding and they deserve it. It's like, they don't deserve squat, realistically.
Well, they were late. Yeah. I remember when they came in, a lot of the paddlers were like, who the fuck are these guys? Yeah. The ISA, we go to the BOP every year. That's the event, not the ISA Worlds. The
stand-up paddle owes neither of these organisations anything. You know what I mean? And to be honest, there should be a third argument in there. I don't understand how these guys are arguing over something that's not theirs anyway. That's one of my biggest problems is how these guys are arguing for ownership of something that really is not theirs to own. It's not theirs to own. They could potentially help one out if they want to benefit from it, but they can't own it. You know, they didn't invent SUP, or SUP doesn't belong to them.
It's the selfish parents debate.
It is. It's
like they adopted a child that was already an adult.
Yeah, it's so stupidly crazy. And then obviously we as the paddlers all just kind of fall in line. Who chucks money? We go over there because they got a bunch of money. We're over there because they got money. And it's cool while it's happening. You know, obviously sometimes you've got to look past this and past the money. And you know, I look past the money these days because I can't get any of their money anymore.
It's easy when you're off the podium.
Everyone's
past the money.
Yeah, everyone's too freaking quick now. So, but maybe, and I guess that's the key. Like,
but it's a good point.
When you're looking,
you think long term.
No, yeah, and you got to think long term. Like, and that's what I kind of really hope the athletes are looking at it. Look, I know a lot of everyone's kind of young. Like, there's a reason I'm off it, but I'm a little older. All these young kids are fast, you know. And I'm just hopefully that they look at it and they just don't go and chase a little bit of money now for long term pain that might suffer the sport. Suffer on the sport. So yeah, I don't know, like it's a tough topic and everyone's got their opinion on it, and we're all really just speculating on what's going on behind closed doors, which pisses me off because I'm someone who kind of says it how it is, and that's how I like to have it spelled out. But all these guys who really don't SUP, have no interest in SUP, keep these secrets close to them and don't let us know anything. So
it's bizarre. I know more about what's happening with the impeachment of Donald Trump than I do about what's happening in my own sport.
Yeah, and you can't get information off anyone. No one wants to say anything. They're all so closed up because they're scared that someone's going to know something somewhere and use it against them. And you know, you have these trials where they're taking their own friggin' athletes over there, and everyone's instead of getting someone who's impartial who just says, "Hey, look, ISA is doing a shit job, ICF's doing better, let's just go there," or vice versa. You know, someone who's on the outside who really has no ties to either. And that, I think that's where it's got to go. It's like, hey, look, we don't need either one, but if we are going to choose one, let's choose the right one for our sport. You know, do we have to choose one? Do we just tell them both to just get jacked? And
I'm going to send this podcast to whoever's on the chair of the Court of Arbitration for Sport and say, just listen to Jacko's rant here that basically sums up this whole shit show.
Yeah, I think that's the feeling of most people. They're just kind of over it. They just don't want to be told a pile of crap. And you know, when I listened to the interview the other day, he was just talking like a politician was talking.
Yeah.
You know, it was just so friggin' boring. It was like, come off it.
There's no honesty.
Just speak some damn truth. Like, I'm so happy to go with someone who just says it like it is. And you know, this has been from the early days of ABP where Tristan would tell me something and then it would be a friggin' lie, or wouldn't tell this or wouldn't tell that, and I was like, oh, just tell me the truth and I'm happy to support you.
Yeah.
You know, I think most people are that kind of way orientated. That if someone tells them the truth, it's me, I'm ringing.
All right. Yeah.
So if someone tells them the truth, we're all pretty honest people in this sport. You know, there's no real bullshit artists.
Yeah.
So
except for everyone that's
except for everyone who does, everyone in charge who probably doesn't SUP anyway. You know, probably paddle their paddle backwards or have done it once. And those are the guys who are making our decisions, and that's what kind of pisses.
You're right. Like, their arguments on both sides are bullshit.
Yep.
Like, the ICF's trying to argue that they were there first, which is insane.
Yep.
We all know they weren't. They're also trying to argue, well, you're holding a paddle, so it's ours.
Yeah.
Like, that's ridiculous. That's like Surfing Federation coming in and saying, oh, you're doing a downwinder in the ocean with wind, you're a sailing sport.
Yeah.
Like, it's an extraordinary thing to try and argue that you own a sport by default when you've had no interest. Then the ISA's argument is like, well, we were there first, so it's ours. Neither one's saying, here's our plan for the next 5 years, here's our plan for the next 20 years, here's how we can help, here's how we can improve, here's what we're not doing right, here's what we are doing right. Just like complete transparency and forward thinking.
Yeah. Commit to something.
You wouldn't think it was such a hard thing to do.
No. Commit to something long term, and I guess this is the argument I hear a lot of times against the ICF is that we just, they're chucking money at it now and making it all look fantastic, and it did look great, but if they do get it, it's just going to dry up, and all of a sudden we're going to end up just one of the poor cousins of a canoeing federation. And it's a valid argument. Like, they haven't come out and said, hey, once we win the rights to stand-up paddleboarding, which they shouldn't get anyway, but anyway, if they do get it, then this is our future plan, how we're going to build SUP from the sport it is now into the massive, great sport it can be.
Yeah.
You know, like, where's the 10-year plan for this? Like, let's have a 10-year plan of how, if they want to go to the Olympics, how we actually are going to get it to the Olympics. Instead of arguing about we were the first to have it. I don't care who was the first to have it. Neither was the first. I want to hear how they're actually going to progress our sport to make sure it doesn't decline in numbers, or that the racing grows in all different areas.
Yes.
You know, it's a real simple things, and that's what most people want. So,
yeah, I think I'm surprised by both federations. One, that the ISA has left the door so wide open. Like, this shouldn't even be a debate. They were there so much earlier, but they've just dropped the ball and left the door wide open. But the ICF is basically just standing in the doorway. They haven't walked through and claimed it because they're not doing it either. They're not showing forward vision. They did one great event.
Yeah, I don't think anyone should be able to own a sport just because they were there first either. You know, it's like turning up to a surf break and thinking you own it just because you were the first surfer to surf there, and then getting all aggressive and territorial about it. Just because you were there surf, that's cool. Hey, look, no worries. I'm stoked you were there, but you don't own it. You know, if I want to go surf, I'm going to surf it.
Exactly.
So,
well, I think my summary of this would be, I just wish CAS, the Court of Arbitration for Sport, would come back, because apparently they're making a decision, some kind of decision next month. My ideal scenario would be, tell them both to come back in 2 years and go and get your shit together.
Yeah.
And then regardless whether they make a decision now or in 2 years, stand-up paddling's just got to know that we'll always be stand-up paddling.
Yeah,
we're never going to be a surfing sport. We're never going to be a canoe sport. It doesn't matter. Even if we got into the Olympics and one of these two federations was in charge, we're still going to be stand-up paddlers. The Olympics happens every 4 years.
Yep.
That's not going to be the core of our sport. The core of our sport is the Glogau's, the Euro Tours, the local club races here in Australia, the people that just paddle for a passion.
Yep.
So I think no matter what happens...
Team racing.
Team racing, that's the new core.
So this is...
starting next year.
That's where our sport... Right now, all the focus on our sport should be targeted towards that. And to be honest, I think if either one of the two organisations sat down and realised this, it would give them the biggest step over the other one, just realising that if we just focused on the core, like neither one of them have at all a good core base in really any country. Some might have little pockets here in the world, but like in Australia, as an example, the bloody Surfing Australia, Surfing Queensland have the least number of turn up to their events out of any competition. Yeah, because people just don't give a shit about it. You can have a club race in Brisbane that has 5 to 10 times more people.
Yeah, that's interesting. Essentially, the summary is that neither federation should be in charge, and even if one is technically like in charge of the Olympic side, we've just got to know that it's our sport, it's the people that do the sport.
Yeah.
And so long as we have that mentality, I think we're going to have a bright future.
Yep.
But on that note, I usually ask a guest at the end if they've got a funny story about paddlers that had too much to drink after an event or something. But we might have our own one in a few hours because we got to get ready for a wedding.
We do.
A good friend of ours. And actually, you know what? I just realised. So Nick McDonald, Macca, whose wedding we're going to this afternoon, he was the guy that got me into stand-up paddling. Because I remember he used to train with you guys.
Yep,
he used to be a really bloody good paddler.
Yep.
He went and did the BOP Hawaii and everything. I was best mates with him in high school. And I came home from Sweden one year and went and visited him. And I was like, what are you up to? He's like, well, you know, basically all I do now is paddle on the creek in the morning. I was like, that's stand-up paddle? Like, what the fuck? He's like, yeah, you know, come down. We got a really good training group. So I came down there and it was like you, Angie, our buddy Macca, like Bo, Brian, I think, like Callie had another training group there. Travis Grant came in at the beginning.
There,
Jamie Mitchell was there, like the who's who of the paddling world back then. And I basically just jumped straight in the deep end. And from there, here we are.
You've kept a pretty solid pace of the same level since.
I'm about as fast now as I was in 2011. I can
Lucky the
guarantee.
boards have got better.
Yeah, it's masked my slow and steady decline. But on that note, let's wrap it up.
Yep.
Thank you very much.
No worries.
All right, we have to do a few more of these, I think, in the studio.
Since we're in the headquarters here anyway, so
we can do a weekly.
We can talk shit all the time.
Yeah. All right, folks. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you soon.
Sweet.
All right.